man getting bit by an alligator and he screams. Sit down first, me.
Oh! No, not an owl. A real scream of pain.
Hello, Screamers. It is day whatever. What is today? It's like day 5 of the Dallas International Film Fest. This is Driving While Screaming. The third version of this so far. It's just me tonight. Brock had to be responsible with, life and work and things, and whereas I never am in this case when it comes to movies. So you'll hear things falling around in my car, but it is just me tonight. I saw 4 different movies today. 2 of them were associated with the Dallas International Film Festival. 2 of them were just at the Texas Theater. There wasn't there wasn't anything that was really catching my eye at the Dallas International Film Festival this evening. They had Gaslit, which we've already seen, and then they had a Soleil Moon Frye documentary that, I'll be honest, I wasn't overly interested in, so I passed on those and went over to see a 35 millimeter print of William Friedkin's Cruising, and then a 35 millimeter print of a John Huckert film, who you probably haven't heard of, a movie called Hard. Both of those films, and we'll talk about those films first, to get them out of the way, because it's a little bit difficult to talk about them. Well, I guess it would be difficult to talk about the diff ones as well, but, they were both themed where they were, queer stories about, killers who were, targeting gay men, and then there was a detective you were following a detective that's following the case. In Friedkin's case, Cruising is made after The French Connection and obviously The Exorcist and Sorcerer, for that matter. And, this was obviously a highly controversial film when it came out. It was protested by gay rights advocates. They actually protested it while it was being filmed. It's based off of a novel, kind of loosely based off of a novel, as well as some murders that were going on in the New York area when Friedkin was there. This is a pretty infamous film. It's the one that probably needs and deserves a deeper dive than just a Driving While Screaming. But it's interesting watching it, one, with the crowd, which I'd never done before, and obviously 35 millimeter print, it makes it something special. Texas Theater did a great job of putting it together, and it looked great. It looked pretty pristine for the most part. There were a few hiccups, but other than really, it looked gorgeous on the screen. If you've never seen it before, it's a weird, it's kind of a weird time capsule, because this is like pre-AIDS, or at least pre-AIDS coming into prominence. It's not mentioned at all in the film, and so it's it's just focusing on these murders. But obviously, the way that the gay community is depicted, especially these leather S&M kind of sex clubs, bondage clubs, it's pretty lurid. It's pretty exploitative. And, the film exists in this weird realm where you're supposed to believe that Pacino plays this guy named Steve, I forget his last name. Steve Burns, that's what his name is. Steve Burns, who is a new detective, and he's going undercover into this world that doesn't know anything about, right? But he just happens to look like the men that are being targeted. He has a girlfriend, Karen Allen, and, as he gets further and further into this world, he seemingly starts to question his own sexuality. We are kind of thought to believe that, his participation in this world is deeper than what it is. But the film kind of exists in this weird realm of like an Italian giallo film where it's a lot of sleaze and you don't really know, how much Pacino's character has delved into this world to the point where you want to believe that or you don't want to believe. The film kind of makes you believe that he's, questioning his sexuality at the end, of the film. And we don't really know, did we truly get did the murderer, get caught, etc. And so it's an interesting movie. I don't think it really, it never really has worked for me in the sense of, it doesn't quite work as a giallo. And I don't know, it's weird in the sense of it feels gross a lot of times. Not, I mean, like it just feels like it really is too exploitative and it feels like it's taking advantage of its subjects. And so to that end, you're just wondering like, what's the point of all of this? What are we really truly doing here? And to that end, I can't answer the question. I mean, I think it's an interesting experiment. I think it shows the side of New York, I think, that I'm always like interested in seeing. But like, reading about this movie, Al Pacino is still kind of like Al Pacinoing the role. It was originally going to go to Richard Gere, which I think is a wildly better choice than Pacino. I do think Pacino's like machismo and like there's no ambiguity, at least when you first meet him about what kind of person he is. It plays okay, but I think the Gere playing this role, would have done something really like kind of interesting and special with it. So overall, I mean, I think it's an interesting artifact in queer cinema, especially, how the queer community, comes around on it. But overall, for me, I'm glad that I saw it with the crowd. I'm glad that I saw it on 35 millimeter. It's always interesting to kind of remember how many like character actors got their start. Like Ed O'Neill is in this, Paul Sorvino is not his first role. Ed O'Neill's first role is this, Paul Sorvino, Karen Allen. There's a bunch of people that you'll recognize. And so it's a William Friedkin film. So, I mean, it's going to look great. It's going to have really interesting moments, but overall for me, I'm not a huge like fan of kind of going back to it over and over again. The second film was called Hard. It was a John Huckert film. It was a independent film shot on 35 millimeter. So it looked great as well. And it had a better idea of what it wanted its story to be. That I think Cruising does. It is a low budget film made for, around $100,000. So, it wears some of those trappings on its sleeve, but I will say that, for the most part, it's pretty well acted. Like the gore and I mean, like there's a lot of like dead bodies and it doesn't shy away from, it's sexuality where you feel like Cruising sometimes gives you too much and too little all at the same time. I will not say that it's a great film, but I think it's a really interesting one as it gets going and as you can kind of get past the lower budget feel of it all. I think it's a really interesting artifact. It's also a really interesting artifact and one that's really hard to see. But if you can find it, I think it's a really worthwhile watch, on, just from a perspective of like, it's just kind of an infrequently seen, infrequently screened film. And to me, those are always interesting, especially when they come from people who, sorry, trying to change lanes here. It's difficult to do this while I'm driving, and within Brock's not here. So we saw 35 millimeter, prints of Cruising and Hard tonight. Started out the day, with watching two films at the Dallas International Film Festival at the Sinopolis Victory Park. Today was a much better day, than yesterday, so I'm glad about that. The first film I saw was called The Three Urns. This was its North American debut. It stars Ciarán Hinds, as a man who has recently lost his wife, and he is taking her urn of ashes, basically kind of back to her homeland. And on the way, he's stopping and doing things, that she wanted to have done. So he was, he took her to certain places. He would leave things, behind to kind of commemorate that she was there. It's a really, it was an interesting movie. It was funny, but too, because like, a retirement community had sponsored the screening. So they had like 25 people that they brought in from this retirement community for like a 145 screening of this film. And like some of them wanted to see it again because I don't think they understood all the dialect. Although it wasn't train spotting. It wasn't terribly difficult to understand. But I'm not, it happens. And so, but that being said, the idea, I think the retirement community sponsored the film because they wanted to, this is a film that depicts people in later stages in their life in kind of a positive and not, and not as a burden or not stereotypically how they normally portray. The movies are really, it was really odd. It took a minute for it to get going. Because it kind of exists. Like when I tell you the synopsis, it sounds like it's relatively straightforward. This guy's going to go, he's going to do some things, he's going to meet some people along the way. And at the end of it, he will make his peace with his wife being gone and how he has to continue on with his life, which all of that does actually happen. But I think the film, again, but it takes a good 30 minutes for this film to become kind of interesting. And then once that happens, I think it really kind of all gels together well. But we meet these reoccurring characters throughout his trip, which we shouldn't meet. So this film exists in this kind of fantasy realm where, it's kind of like a Joe versus volcano type of experience where we continually meet these people over and over again, to kind of bring us back to, a kind of a common thread. Like there's a religious character that we meet that follows us along on our trip. There's these two, I couldn't really pick what they were, what they were, they're government officials somehow, and they fall in love with one another later on in the film. We see this one woman who has a coffee shop, pop up now and again throughout the film. And everyone here is it's mostly a series of vignettes. So we tell a story, we watch Ciarán Hinds go down the road for a little bit, and then we tell another story. We play some music. It's very Irish. There's a ton of Irish music in it. But all in all, it's just a really kind of simple and nice film. There's also a through line about how there's this one woman chasing Ciarán Hinds, trying to catch up to him, and you don't ever really know why until they meet in a bar and it realizes that again, it's going to be a hard time for you to see it. So by the time you see it again, once you come across it and you think, oh yeah, the Wilhelm boys saw Three Urns, let me sit down and watch this. You'll forget this part of it. But she's chasing him, um, because he's taken the wrong urns, the wrong ashes, and so he has to swap them out. So that's one of the urns. There's like two urns, and then there's another urn of this other guy that just kind of like following along his trip as well. But it turns out he's been carrying his husband's ashes for like 15 years, and has struggled with what to do with them. It's a really bizarre title. Although I think, man taking wife's ashes on one last trip is a terrible. I don't know what you would call this movie or what you would name it. The Three Urns is really kind of it makes you think that there's going to be more to the urns than it actually is. There's not. There just happens to be three urns, and that just happens to be what the movie is called. Uh, I don't know. I mean, it's all very, like I said, it's all very nice. It's all very simple. It's beautifully shot. I think is it a great film? Does it really truly know what it wants to do with all of its metaphors and, all of its quirky characters? No, it's never really truly quirky enough. It's never truly where you feel like it's sentimental enough. Some of the vignettes are not well acted, so they come across as kind of dry and stilted. And so that's kind of where I had a hard time getting into the flow of this movie. But I think overall it was like, and again, coming off of yesterday, which was such a barrage of negative films, at least negative experiences watching films. This was a nice change of pace. I got to sit with a bunch of older folks who got to enjoy a film, and you sat there for an hour and 30 minutes, and it was all fine. So that was film one, The Three Urns. The second film was a movie called Valentina, which is a Mexican American film about a young woman who just kind of exists in this middle ground between El Paso. Why did I say New York? El Paso and Juarez. So she lives in this border town, and this one also is kind of a series of vignettes. We follow her throughout her day and kind of some of the struggles that she has. There's really no the way that the synopsis reads is that she's got to do this one central task, and she's having trouble doing it. There's all these things all these barriers that pop up that stop her from doing this. But that's not really the case, which makes it I wish I hadn't have read the synopsis. I wish I had just gone in and been, okay, this is a movie about a really vibrant young woman who's in the face of all of these difficulties has she is never, I mean, yes, there are setbacks, and yes, she has problems, but she faces them with courage and optimism. So we follow her around, from basically she has a bunch of different jobs to make money. The film does this really bizarre thing, which I don't truly understand, is that we are constantly calculating how much money she has. It's very much like Half-Baked in the sense of when Dave Chappelle goes on a date and he has no money to pay for a date. And if we had that kind of running counter on the screen of how much cash he has, it's the same thing here. So Valentina gets a ton of parking tickets. She has to, at one point she gets her car towed. And so we're seeing all these things happen in kind of her bank account real time. And then they'll cut away and oh, now she has negative $135 in her account, whatever. It's an odd thing to keep coming back to because we weirdly focus her story around this, I don't know, this idea of her struggles are all about how much cash she has. And of course, she does work a lot of jobs. but the money doesn't really come into play necessarily, other than just to kind of tell us where she is. It doesn't, like, there's not like a thing that she has to do, and she has to get enough money to do that thing, and we constantly watch her bank accounts fluctuate. At one point, her car gets towed, so she has to pay for she has to pay to get her car out of hock. She's weirdly trying to help her father with some, like, bank account stuff, and he doesn't remember all of his, like, numbers, so she can't do that. She goes and donates plasma. She works at, like, this Billy the Kid reenactment historical thing in El Paso. She works at a friend's, like a convenience store, grocery store. She turns down some jobs. And so we kind of just follow her around. Ultimately the story ends up with her, like, talking about this kind of capitalistic exploitation of poor people. And it has a name and I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's basically when it's a company that will put a lien on your car or your credit rating if you get tickets that you can't pay. And so the odd thing that this movie does is that, like, she goes to a group of friends' houses that can encourage her to go to city council to talk out against this thing that exists that, if you get a ticket, you have to go in, and if you can't pay it, then they could take your car away, et cetera, further exacerbating your problems. Also, the movie has, like, intercut, news footage from, like, different presidents about how, immigrants are bad or immigrants shouldn't come over to this country. Immigrants are all criminals. And it's not just Trump. It's also Clinton. It's Kamala. It's Joe Biden. It's George Bush. So it's not like yes, there's a political statement, and yes, this movie is pro-immigrant, because we see all these, like, wonderful stories of, like, these wonderful moments of, like, Valentina with her dad who cuts hair, who can't really speak English all that well, and with her brother. So I think the movie tries probably to do a little too much with its political message, with its, like, or with its message, its immigration message, and also with its message of, like, these anti-poverty tactics. Because I don't believe ultimately that those are really, like, narratives that, they're called out, but they don't really do much with them. And it's things that we kind of already know. I think this film, like, one, needs to pad its runtime. It's only, like, I think it's only 80, or it's like 78 minutes long. So it's not a very long movie. And we run through some credits where we kind of, like, see the filming being done. We see the locations. We see all the locals that helped film this movie. But the story really all exists because, that's the story. The film succeeds on the shoulders of Valentina, the actress who plays Valentina. She's so good. She's so funny. And she's so much fun to watch. She's got this great laugh, and she exists in all these, like, really easy spaces where she can, like, navigate them kind of effortlessly. To a certain extent, these personal relationships where she's, like, really is, you'll never question why people are, not attracted, but, like, attracted to her, because she's so winning. And, there's a sequence where she goes out on the town and gets drunk and so it's just, like, all of these sequences, like, work really well when we're focusing on Valentina. When we're trying to really truly, like, preach to the converted is when the movie gets bogged down a little bit. And again, I think the overall, like, odd message of we are trying to end cities' dependence on these, these devices that make life difficult for poor people. One that's kind of tacked on in a sense. Like, again, it's just a movie called Valentina. We should just be following Valentina. And, like, and so she makes this big and long and passionate speech to the city council. But, like, in reality, like the movie gets us to that point by her building up courage and then sitting through her city council meeting and listening to all these other people talk and staying there so we got time to talk about this piece. But a lot of it is like stuff we hear, we've already heard, you know, where if you don't show up for a court date, your ticket's doubled. And of course that makes it even harder for people to get out of this like constant cycle of poverty. Like I think we all know this thing. I don't know if us waiting for Valentina to say all this at a city council meeting is really worthwhile in this film. But that being said, I enjoyed the movie because I think the lead actress is so good in it. And just kind of watching a day in her life is intriguing. Watching how she navigates with her family and like they take their dad to this new, or you know, a Mexican restaurant that they hadn't eaten at, and they bring out like these ranchero eggs, but the sauce is cold, and he's like upset and he doesn't want to eat them, and it's like her and her brother laughing back and forth about their dad being silly, are the best moments of the film, and so again for the short 78 minutes, you know, I think if you can catch it, I definitely think it's worth the effort. Check out Valentina. Check out Three Urns as well. Again, I think, you know, especially if you've got, older people in your life. This was the North American, I don't know if I mentioned that before, it was the North American debut of that film. I'm sure it'll make its rounds at some point. You know, and I don't know about Valentina, but I would imagine you'll be able to find it at some point somewhere down the line. Both of these films were, again, much better than yesterday's films. And so, you know, we'll take this day as a win where yesterday was a loss. But any day watching movies is a day than better than doing anything else. So, not anything, of course, but most things. All right. So that was day 5 of the festival. Tomorrow, Tuesday, I have 4 films. Brock probably won't be there for all of them. But it's another full day. Wednesday, we're taking the day off because we're actually going to be doing an interview on Wednesday, but no films outside of our own with La Aventura at Stage West. So we're doing a Forward Film Club signature screening at Stage West. And then we'll wrap it up on Thursday with a set of 3 films that I'm actually really looking forward to. The last one being Poetic License, which I'm really interested to see how that level of nepotism works. And is Maud Apatow the girl from This Is 40 and Knocked Up? She makes her directorial debut. And so I'm interested to see if she can edit better than her dad. And yeah, so that will wrap up DIFF 2026, which I think has been a little bit lighter than DIFF 2025, but we've still seen a ton of movies, and so it's a good thing. So thank you guys for listening. Next time we'll try to figure out, I think Brock and I will be driving separately, but I think we'll be utilizing Riverside to stream and drive together if this one comes out okay. I'm hoping that it does. But outside of that, guys, we'll see you next time. And, I haven't said it in a while, but, keep screaming.
You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at reelhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time,